Good afternoon. It's just 2 o'clock and we're going to get started. I want to welcome everybody to Stratagerm's Fundamentals of Seed webinar. I'll be your host today. I'm Michelle Klieger. I've met most of you. I'm excited to get to know more of you, and I'm the founder of Stratagerm Consulting. For the next 45 minutes or so, we'll be talking about seeds. If you have any questions, there's a chat box next to the video. Please feel free to submit those questions as we're going through the presentation. Or you can hold your questions until the end of the presentation and I can answer them at that time. If I don't get to your questions today, or if you are thinking about the presentation afterward and something jumps to mind, please feel free to contact me. My information's available on the last slide. I also, as a thank you for attending this webinar, I want to offer each and every person here a 20-minute one-on-one consultation session with me to discuss specific questions that you have about the material that we've covered on this call, so that you're super prepared for the intermediate courses which come next. So again, you'll be using the chat box during this session. I think everyone is muted, so there won't be any background noise. And now that we've gotten this basic housekeeping done, we're going to jump right in. So let me share the slides with you. Looks like to everyone. So it looks like you can see the slides now. So again, as I mentioned, my name is Michelle Klieger and I founded Stratagerm earlier this year. I'm hosting this webinar today because I believe that I have valuable information about seeds and the seed industry that, when applied to your business, will help optimize your seed selection and grow your business to the next level. My path to founding Stratagerm, which is a seed consulting company, among other things, didn't start on a family farm like you might imagine. I actually grew up on the beach in South Florida, thousands of miles away from traditional Midwest farms. I started with a love of wildlife, and I continued down an unpredictable and winding path to where I am today. Throughout this journey, I believe I've stayed true to the passions that 10-year-old me had when I started my very own wildlife email newsletter. Growing up, I wanted to be a wildlife vet. I volunteered at local animal sanctuaries and I worked for veterinarians in high school. I applied to animal science programs inside colleges of agriculture, and to become a wildlife vet, I quickly discovered that I was going to have to be an Aggie, which is something that I'm now proud of and I hope that will help you. During my junior year of college, I interned in South Africa. I was a veterinary technician at a wildlife park, and I assisted with treating animals and conducting surgeries. I was living my dream as a veterinarian's right hand. Then one night, a local farmer called asking if we could remove a leopard from his property. That call, this night, totally changed my life. The leopard was killing his livestock, which was the farmer's livelihood. But there weren't a ton of places that we could relocate that leopard. So we were going to move it, but even after we moved it, it was possible that it would cause problems for another farmer and potentially be shot. That summer, I learned two things. First, I learned how scarce of a resource land was. And second, I learned that there was a difference between medicine and conservation. I could save an individual through medicine, or in this case, moving the leopard to a new home. Or I could save a species through conservation and making sure that there was enough place for wildlife to live. So my direction shifted. I no longer wanted to save individuals. I wanted to save species. I decided that we needed to be more productive with the land in agriculture, so we needed less of it. Less land under cultivation means more land for wildlife. I understand now that this environment is a little bit more complicated. And to feed a growing population while minimizing the environmental impact, farmers will need to produce more food on less land with fewer inputs, especially water. This new mission took me to Washington, D.C., instead of to veterinary school. I became the Director of International Programs and Policy at the American Seed Trade Association, where I worked with plant breeders every day. They are the ones that make agriculture more productive by selecting for characteristics that would help seeds perform better in different environments. My job was to help seed companies of all sizes selling all types of crops to export their seeds to every country around the world. Plant breeders taught me that better genetics can help farmers, growers, and producers of all kinds achieve greater output with fewer inputs. And my job was to share this knowledge with farmers and government officials alike. Some people in agriculture, but often my message needed to be understandable to non-Aggies. At a seed conference earlier this year, I heard several speakers present on vertical farming. After speaking with the presenters, I realized that they lacked basic understanding of the seed industry, and this was limiting their businesses. By the end of the conference, the speakers also realized that there was a lot of information about seeds and the seed industry that they didn't know. And from these conversations, Stratagerm was born. It feels like the next logical step in my journey to help farmers produce more food on less land with less inputs. Vertical and indoor farming lets producers grow more food with less land and less water and no pesticides. Without the basic seed industry knowledge, vertical farmers are limiting their potential. I strongly believe that better seeds and better genetics is one of the areas that the industry can still make substantial improvements to increase their output and profitability. My experience talking about seeds on almost every continent makes me the right person to help bridge this knowledge gap. So again, thanks for joining me. The really brief history of agriculture is that it has existed for 10,000 years. During this entire time, people have been using plant breeding to select plants to cultivate that grow bigger, taste better, last longer, and probably most importantly, are not poisonous to eat. We've transformed wild plants that you wouldn't recognize into nutritious foods that we thrive on every day. From all of this effort, we now grow enough food to sustain 7 billion people and counting. And on top of that, we eat very diverse and nutritious diets. I like to give a lot of the credit to plant breeders. They took the time to inspect the growing plants each year and decide which ones should be replanted next year. This is the basics of plant breeding. Neither plant breeding nor variety selection are lost to history. These practices are still critical today, and they are carried out by plant breeders, home gardeners, university professors, and public breeding programs around the world. Even my husband took a red amaryllis plant that was a gift from a seed company and a white amaryllis flower from Home Depot and crossed them. Now we have a dozen little pink plants on our windowsill. This is the basics of plant breeding. Every time plant breeders make selections, they improve the variety a little bit. As growers and business owners, you can take advantage of this centuries of effort. All you have to do is pick the right crop and variety for your farming system and your customers. Picking the right variety could increase your overall profitability, either agronomically with increased yields or reduced input costs, or it can happen by allowing you to meet your customers' needs. This happens with better tasting foods or more vibrant colors. Flower color might not be important to you, but spicy microgreens might sell a bit better than bland ones. As a seed consultant, I want to help you understand how to pick the right variety. This will allow you to benefit from the 10,000 years of research that's been done already. It'll help you pick better seeds that will perform better on your farm, resulting in better produce. Plus, I want to help you manage your seeds within your system. This summer, I learned that some of the biggest indoor growers have issues getting seed to show up on their farm in time. Working with growers, I can make minor adjustments in how you purchase your seed to make sure that your deliveries are more reliable and potentially even get access to better pricing. I also learned that different growers have different levels of seed understanding. Some are actively looking for new varieties to test on their farms. They're in touch with seed suppliers and seed companies. They understand how to test new varieties, plus they know who their customers are and what they want. These people need help making sure they get their seed to their farm on time, but so that they can plant on time. Plus, they want access to the new varieties. But other growers that I've spoken to think all seeds are the same. They rely on their seed supplier for advice on how to pick their seeds. These are the people leaving the most money on the table. These potential clients need to start from the beginning. They can increase the amount of vegetables they grow or that they can sell and make more money because they're higher quality through their seed selection. But to do this, they need to know what questions to ask about their farms and their customers, and they need help answering those questions. Once they have this information, they can make better decisions when it's time to buy their seeds. And all of this information will make them their own seed advocate. So you might be asking yourself, why do you need this information? Why, if I have a seed supplier, do I need to know this much about seeds? The seed companies should be the seed experts, right? This is a common thought among growers of all types. And I was on a call earlier this week with a Midwest corn grower, and he was asked how he picks what variety of corn seed he's going to plant each year. He said he listens to the seed supplier and purchases what they recommend. Then he quipped that each year he's promised a 5% increase in his yields. He's been doing this for over 20 years, and that would mean that his farm should yield about 400 bushels per acre by now. Well, that's not going to happen. That's more than twice the national average, and that's definitely not the yield the farmer was seeing. So it's important for everyone to be their own seed advocate and not follow blindly. Now, for this group more specifically, seed companies know their business, not yours. They don't know anything about your specific farm, nor do they know who your ideal clients are. Without knowing your business, they can't provide you with the best information. And I have an example to highlight that. I was talking to a friend and a mentor about the idea of Stratagerm. He was very supportive, but when we started talking about his business, it was clear that he didn't understand indoor farming. He's a third-generation seedsman, so like the corn farmer above, he's been doing this for well more than 20 years. He was approached by some people that wanted to grow wheatgrass in gyms for on-site smoothies. He was thinking about what variety of wheat he wanted to recommend, and he kept focusing on disease resistance. He felt that because the wheat would be grown hydroponically and therefore around a lot of water, disease resistance was important. Disease resistance means that the plant is less likely to get sick. It's a plant essentially with a strong immune system. In traditional agriculture, moist climates have more pests and diseases. So farmers that grow in warm, wet environments generally want plants with strong immune systems, or in industry jargon, plants that are disease resistant. I understand why my friend made this choice, but I would not have made the same recommendation. We'll come back to disease resistance later, but for now, I'm going to explain why I think my friend had the wrong advice. Indoors, wheatgrass is harvested after just 7 days. It only grows for 1 week. That's barely enough time for disease to infect the plant. So in my mind, disease resistance is really a low priority. It's not the most important feature. And I wanted my friend to consider the indoor temperature of the gym, the number of hours of growing light the grass would be exposed to, the amount of space between these plants, and other features that were unique to this growing location. But I know that unique to this growing location is something that seed companies don't understand. It's not a concept that my friend had experienced. This is the same. It just isn't that much variation in traditional agriculture. There is some, but not to the degree that we see outdoors. There are regional differences outdoors, which will affect temperature and number of daylight hours or moisture. But all of this is fluid, and you can't control Mother Nature. My friend never took his traditional agriculture cap off, and I think that he could have provided a better product if he understood what the growing environment was. Did his clients know enough to push back and prioritize something else over disease resistance? This example highlights the fundamental communication problems that indoor agriculture companies are facing. Since many of them think that all seeds are the same, and many seed companies think that all indoor farms are the same, there are many cases when the best seeds are not being selected. These generalizations are the foundation of the relationship that seed companies and seed suppliers have. And based on these generalizations, you're probably buying seeds that are good for hydroponics, but not for your brand of hydroponics. Those seeds will get you into the ballpark, but the real value add is in the home stretch. All hydroponic systems are not the same, and looking at the differences can result in a home run. The first time I brought home a seed catalog, my husband was floored. He's an engineer, and he couldn't believe that there was an entire book dedicated to just one type of seed. The diversity in these catalogs is incredible. And as an engineer, he needs to follow a logical path that will take him to the right answer. I can imagine his face if I told him that he had to flip through this catalog and pick just one seed. The seed that he picks will determine his profitability and his success as a farmer. And because the seed plays a huge role, it would have on what the plant looked like and how it tasted. I'm sure with all this pressure, he would panic. The catalog itself is overwhelming for sure, and the importance of the decision cannot and should not be understated. But knowing the technical specifications of your farm and what your customers can make and what your customers expect from you will make this process more manageable. A seed company does not know who your clients are. They don't know what your customers are expecting. And there are so many different products that are available for you. How can you know where to start? At Food for Tech last weekend, there were several large indoor growers in attendance. Eden Works was giving samples of microgreens. They are spicy microgreens and not spicy microgreens. The spicy microgreens have radish sprouts mixed in for the extra flavor. The company shared their recipes, and not one of these recipes recommended making a salad with their product. These make great garnishes or toppings on top of proteins, but they are not a leafy green for a lettuce. Across the room was Gotham Greens. They sell boxes of romaine lettuce in grocery stores all over. They've expanded into lines of salad dressings and pestos. The romaine lettuce they sell is great for salads. The leaves are crispy and they stack nicely. Plus, they're trimmed neatly and have the best presentation in a grocery store. I brought home samples that we turned into a salad the next day for lunch, and it was excellent. Can you see how these products are different? Can you see how people will want the Eden Works microgreens sometimes and Gotham Green romaine other times? On the surface, these products are similar. They're both greens. They both come out of indoor operations. They both are grown hydroponically, and they both tasted great. But the products were not substitutes for each other. They shouldn't use romaine lettuce as a garnish. Putting lettuce on top of your meat or fish will not get you many likes on Instagram. Similarly, you shouldn't use spicy greens as the basis of your entire entree-sized salad. It would be overpowering and not an enjoyable culinary experience. I use lettuce as an example because most indoor farmers grow at least some lettuce. Plus, I want this technical and niche topic to make sense to you. I imagine many of you are struggling to pick lettuce seed because there are so many different types. There are 7 categories of lettuce, some of which include salad lettuce, sandwich lettuce, lettuce for soups, lettuce for stir fries, and as you saw above, they're not interchangeable. If you don't give your customer what they expect, Or if you don't teach them how to prepare it like Edenworks did, you probably won't have repeat customers. Hopefully by now you can see how having a good grasp on the fundamentals of seeds will help your business. So let's get started with some of the basics. This is the hardest and most technical slide of the presentation, so please bear with me. Because this information is so important to achieve the goals I've set out for the webinar, today I want to help you be comfortable with seed industry jargon that you can be your own advocate. But to do that, you have to understand a little bit of the jargon, and that's where we're going to go next. So starting at this top, seeds are the flowering plant's unit of reproduction. Seeds are how plants make new plants. You're probably familiar with some seeds. Corn kernels are seeds, apple cores are filled with apple seeds, pits and stone fruit are seeds, and the white dandelion bulbs that you blow on are seeds. Other types of seeds that you might not be as familiar with come from plants like lettuce, onions, and herbs. They do in fact reproduce through seeds, but hopefully you won't see those very often. Genetics is the study of inherited characteristics. Genetics is the study of why individuals are different. So why do I have brown hair and you have blonde hair? How easy is it for me to pass my brown hair on to my daughter? People that study genetics try to answer these questions every day. Plant geneticists are not worried about my hair color, but they study the differences between plants. A gene is the way that inherited characteristics are passed from one generation to the next. The seed contains the genes that the flowering plant passes on to the next generation, and the genes tell the plant how to grow. So a plant breeder is the person that tries to improve the genetics of the plants. They try to pick plants for the next generation that have features you want and fewer features that you don't want. They do this by looking at thousands or even millions of plants in a field and then picking the plants with the best characteristics. The best plants are bred together to reproduce the next generation. This is not only one definition of what makes a plant. There is not only one definition of what makes a plant the best plant. Rather, it depends on what the plant breeder wants to improve. It could be the size. Maybe you're looking for shorter sugarcane plants because there are more storms and higher winds that knock over the tall plants. Or maybe you want taller lettuce because you've started using mechanized harvesting and the higher plant makes it easier to cut. Breeders may look for different tastes as well. I was once at a melon trial and I tasted 5 different cantaloupes. After talking with the breeders, I learned they sold the sweetest melons into the US market and the less sweet melons into the Asian market. So those are 2 different examples of what plant breeders are looking for. The people that find the best plants and breed them with each other to make better plants are plant breeders. And we'll dive into more examples of what they can breed for in the next slide. There's one more definition I want to cover, and it's variety. When a plant breeder finds a plant that is very desirable, it becomes the basis of a variety. A variety is a specific subset of a species. So an example that you might have heard of is Rex lettuce. It's a popular variety among indoor growers. Rex is a variety of Bibb lettuce, and Bibb is a type of lettuce. Rex is the name given to the specific variety of Bibb lettuce, distinguishing it from other varieties. It's a commercial name that helps farmers and seed companies identify varieties that are desirable. Plant breeders can look for so many different things when they're looking for new varieties. This is how we end up with 7 different types of lettuce. Some of these characteristics you might expect, like higher production, or maybe even the natural disease resistance we talked about earlier. But that's just the beginning. A few other characteristics that come to mind quickly are and that are probably relevant to your business are resistance to heat and moisture and reduced tip burn in lettuce. Some plants are naturally better at growing in very hot or very humid environments, while others are not. Understanding what plant breeders can accomplish through plant breeding is important because it lets you make better choices when you're ready to buy seed for next year. One variety cannot excel in each of these categories. It's like a great restaurant. You can't find great food, fast service that's inexpensive. There are trade-offs in dining and there are trade-offs in plant breeding. So if you pick a variety that does not get sick often, like my friend was recommending to the gyms, you will have resistance to a specific disease. But that resistance comes at a cost. In my example, the resistant plants are smaller, and the plants without than the normal plant without the resistance. The plant breeder prioritized not getting sick over huge lettuce leaves. So now you've picked the extra healthy variety, and you probably paid a premium for it. The problem is you paid for disease resistance, and because you grow in a controlled environment, your plants will likely never be exposed to any of the diseases. Making it worse, you might sell that lettuce by the pound and you just picked a variety that has smaller lettuce leaves. This means that you will have fewer pounds to sell to your loyal customers. This will limit how much money you can make in a year. You're paying more for seeds that will result in less money for you in the end. You may wonder why anyone would want disease resistance. It's kind of an insurance policy. If you grow lettuce in an environment where it might get exposed to diseases, you'd want the resistance. Non-resistant plants will probably all die. That would mean you'd have no crop to sell. So you're happy to take a slightly smaller amount of leaves in order to ensure that at the end of the season, you have a crop. For those growers, it's a great trade-off. Protection of 100% for a slightly smaller amount of lettuce makes sense. But if you don't need the protection, why are you accepting the downside? So now we're going to move into the power of your seed. Biologists and plant geneticists use a simple equation to think about the world. The genotype, which is all the genes inside the seed, plus the environment, which is the place that the plant grew up in, results in the phenotype or the plant's appearance. Translated from science speak to normal person English, this equation essentially describes the nature versus nurture debate. Nature is the genetics and nurture is the environment that the individual is raised in. Nature and nurture both impact the plant and how it grows. So in your business, the vegetables that you harvest are the results of the plant's genes interacting with the environment that the seed grows in. Controlled environment agriculture operations have almost total control over their environment, or the nurture. The environment doesn't change, while for outdoor growers, the environment is always changing. From one side of their farm to another, you can have completely different conditions. And therefore, when they're picking their seeds, they need to consider all of these options. But for indoor growers, you don't have this much variation. You've invested a lot of time and money into designing the right environment. You know exactly how much nutrients will be applied, the temperature of the room, the amount of CO2, and the spacing, plus the number of days to harvest. For most growers that Stratagerm works with, they've spent a lot of time perfecting these environments, but they've spent very little time considering the plants that they put in the environments. Spending a small amount of time on the nature part will give you a lot of control over the phenotype or that final output, the products that you're selling, and this is extremely valuable. The amount of control you have over your environment is truly amazing. Every farmer that has grown crops in the last 10,000 years is honestly jealous of you. Since you don't have to worry about unexpected environmental changes, you don't need seeds that will do well in all conditions. You just need seeds that will do well in your conditions. Even though you can easily write down what your environmental conditions are and you still have to find the best seeds to fit in that system. And right now, most of the seeds that are available to you were selected to be planted outside in traditional agriculture. These plants are bred to be consistent in unpredictable environments. Have you ever driven past a field of any type and noticed that every single plant looks exactly the same? If you look at large cornfields, each stalk has exactly one ear of corn. It grows about 3/4 of the way up the stalk on the right side of the plant. It's tilted slightly, and there are exactly 16 rows of kernel on each ear of corn. Nothing is this regimented in science. But corn farmers need perfectly aligned corn plants so that they can quickly and efficiently mechanically harvest their corn. And plant breeders have made this possible. They've picked plants that all look exactly the same when they're harvested. And the goal is that the corn meets these requirements even if there's a drought or a flood or if it's exposed to a disease. You just don't need that resilient of plants. You don't need plants that can survive being attacked by insects or look good after they've been shipped across the country or even the globe. You need plants that grow rapidly, perform well under the light you use, and can be mechanically harvested. Plus, they taste amazing. University of Florida professor Kevin Folta spoke at the International Congress on Controlled Environmental Agriculture this year. He painted a comical yet apt picture of mixed-match genetics, like the ones we just discussed. He said that one of the limitations of controlled environment agriculture is that the conditions do not match the genetics available. Plants grown in these environments were actually developed for field production. There's a lot of opportunity that goes unrealized by growing plant in a controlled environment. He likened it to chihuahuas pulling a dog sled. Plants that are bred for one application are expected to perform very differently in different applications. The genetics just don't match. Outdoor agriculture needs strong, robust, stable plants. You may not. The genetics are extremely important in determining what the vegetable that you grow looks like. Breeding companies are beginning to invest in indoor agriculture. Every seed company that I've spoken to since starting Stratagerm is excited to collaborate. They know that indoor production is going to continue to grow, and they want to have products that meet your demands. By investing time and resources to better understand what you need from your seeds, so that you can grow better vegetables. You can share this information with a seed company, and they can continue to have new varieties that meet those demands. And I wanted to share this one image to show you a little bit about how those genotypes and phenotypes, or the genetics and the environment, interact. So the University of Florida professor that I mentioned previously, Kevin Folta, did this experiment with red Russian kale. And these are sprouts from about 10 different plants under 10 different lights. And you can see how different, or at least the colors, vary between the sprouts. So this is the exact same seed planted 10 times, and you can see how different it comes out in your environment. So by now, hopefully you can tell that I feel pretty strongly about understanding the details of your growing environment and then adding in the desires of your customers. By knowing those two pieces of information, you can help select the right seeds that will lead to better vegetables. This combination will maximize your profitability and your success. I actually believe so strongly in this that I built a business around it. When I speak to growers, they're so excited about their technology, about selling local food, about the sustainability, and they just don't realize how important the seed is. Barbara Corcoran, the real estate mogul and Shark Tank star, encourages people to hire their opposites. Your business is technology plus agriculture, and you need to have expertise in both areas to succeed. Up until now, we've talked about how the magic of plant breeding has resulted in thousands of varieties for you to pick from. During the rest of the webinar, we're going to dive into how seeds are produced. We've touched on many of the features that you can select for if you know what you're looking for, and these are just few examples I've pulled out for this presentation. During one-on-one sessions, Stratagerm helps clients complete worksheets to better define their systems. If you take the time to understand your customers' needs and the technical features of your operation, you can use those to select varieties that are most advantageous to you. You can pick products that your customers will love and varieties that will grow well in your system. This will maximize your profits and reputation. So picking the right seeds is important, but getting the seeds on time is way more important. I continue to hear growers that are having a hard time getting seed on time. As the vertical farming and indoor agriculture community continues to grow, I think this problem will get worse. Just think about it. A traditional farmer purchases seed once, maybe twice a year. You need to plant lettuce seed 12 times a year. That means you need more than 12 times more seed than the average outdoor grower. And if you grow wheatgrass or other sprouts, you can plant it more than 50 times over the course of the year. This is a demand for seed that seed companies are not used to. It's another place where there's a huge misconnection. Stratagerm helps clients address problems with getting seed as well. This misalignment between vertical farmers and seed companies is apparent in the value chain. It's a lot like buying a chihuahua and asking it to pull a sled. You may be facing seed shortages because seed companies are not prepared to handle your year-round sales. Traditional agriculture operations need seed in the spring to plant, and this is what seed companies are used to. You need seed year-round. And knowing how to communicate these differences to your seed supplier will improve the service you can receive from them. Year-round demand for seed is not an easy transition for a seed company. I'll explain in the next slide why it's so difficult. So most farmers, producers, growers never think about where their seed comes from. And this is true for every type of agriculture: traditional, conventional, small scale, large scale, organic, vertical, and indoor agriculture. No one thinks about where their seed comes. Growers purchase seed and they show up in a bag, and the seeds are removed from the bag and planted. Seeds are just another input they need to make their farm function. But before your seed gets to you, it has a really long and complicated journey. So we talked about plant breeding, and that process alone takes 7 to 10 years. I'm not going to get into the details on this during this series. We're actually going to start after a plant breeder has selected a new variety. So when the plant breeder has selected that new variety, they have a very small number of seeds, and they need to make a lot more seeds so that you can plant them all. These seeds are extremely valuable. They only have a handful, and they're called parent seeds. These will eventually be turned into millions and millions of commercial seeds, which is what you will plant. When I first learned about how seed producers turn parent seeds into commercial seeds, I was completely shocked. First, I had no idea how valuable seeds could be. It makes me think of Jack and the Beanstalk. He traded a family cow for magical beans. Well, the parent seeds might not be magical, but they are so valuable that people handcuff briefcases of parent seeds to themselves when they travel from the farm to the location where the seeds will be planted and reproduced. Once they arrive on these farms, the seeds are planted, pollinated, and grown, just like the plants you grow. The difference is that seed producers don't want the vegetables that the plants grow, they want the seeds. This normally requires waiting until the vegetables are overripe. Then the fruit is harvested and the seeds are removed from the plant. Now, instead of having a handful of seeds, you have a lot more. The seeds are then sold to you, and you in commercial quantities, and then you plant these commercial seeds. This whole process of turning parent seeds into commercial seeds takes at least 1 year. In the spring, the parent seeds are planted by the seed producer. The seed producer grows them all summer, and then he harvests them. Seeds come from this natural process and not from a factory. Therefore, they can't be created on demand. The seeds you purchase in the spring were planted the spring before and harvested the fall before you ordered them. Traditional agriculture operations only need seed once a year, and they also plant in the spring. So the seeds are harvested in the fall and sold to the growers in the spring when they're going to be used. But again, everything is different with indoor and controlled agriculture. You don't have to plant in the spring. You can plant in August. And as you get ready to plant, you realize you need more seed. So you call your seed supplier. If your seed supplier doesn't have excess inventory from last year, then he or she won't have any seed to sell you. It just doesn't exist. Planning ahead is critically important to avoid shortages. Once the seed is harvested, a seed company cannot make more. Seeds aren't widgets. They are not a just-in-time commodity. So, to give you a snapshot of the timetable, right now, seed companies are projecting how much seed they're going to need in the spring of 2020. And like every business, they want to produce what they need and nothing more. They don't want to pay to produce seed that no one wants, and they don't want to store the seed because it's expensive and it loses its quality over time. Plus, new varieties are going to continue to come out, so they don't want to end up holding varieties that no one wants. So their information today is going to impact what's available to you in a year and a half from now. So the seed is harvested in the fall, but it doesn't get to you for a few months. What happens during that time? This slide talks a little bit about what happens after a seed is harvested, but before it gets to you. Today, I'm just providing the overview. This topic has its own session in an upcoming series. After the seed is harvested, it's cleaned so the dirt and debris is removed. Seeds grow on plants, and the plants are harvested. Parts of the plant and soil come with those seeds, and you don't want those, so they're cleaned. Then the seeds are sorted to make sure that you're getting the type of seed you want and no other seed. So weed seeds and inert seeds are removed. Then the seeds are tested. Both health tests and quality tests are done. And finally, the seeds are packaged and shipped out. Again, for right now, you don't really need to understand this process in detail. The takeaway message is that seed production is difficult and it takes a long time. I think this topic requires a session of its own because I've gotten questions from indoor growers about working directly with breeding companies and skipping seed distributors. They feel that they might be able to skip the middleman, which could result in better prices and a sturdier supply chain. I'm confident that if you purchase enough seed, breeding companies will happily sell to you directly. They will not require you to work with a distributor. This choice may save you money, and it may help you avoid competition for seed, so you'll have fewer shortages. But to be honest, it's not that simple. And before you cut out your seed distributor, you need to know what they do behind the scenes and be ready to take that work over yourself. For example, they file import paperwork from the government to get your seeds into the country. They store the seed and ensure high germination rates that meet federally required levels. They test new varieties and decide what to put in their catalog. So I worry that if you don't understand what they do and you cut them out of the equation, you might be creating more problems for yourself than you're solving. And so that's why I'm dedicating an entire hour to this conversation. For today, remember that by working with your seed supplier more than a year in advance, you will have seeds ready to plant and you can avoid shortages. These steps will help ensure that you have the seed when you're ready to plant. So I know that this is a lot of information, and before we move into the conclusion, I want to pause for a second. It doesn't look like there are any questions in the queue. If you have any, please send them in. To be honest, I've tried to make this topic as light as possible. Between last month's webinar and this webinar, I've changed up the presentation quite a bit, and any feedback you have is immensely helpful. Please let me know what you think and what questions you have so I can continue to tailor the presentation to your needs. There's so much more I want to share with you, but I'm already over my time limit. So to respect everyone's time, I'm going to move into the takeaways. First, you need to be your own seed expert. This is something that everyone needs to do. No matter how long you've been in the game, you need to know what seed you're looking for and making sure that you're purchasing it. Second, your business is not judged on how cool its lights are or how energy efficient it is. It's judged based on how awesome the produce is that you sell. So you need to sell vegetables that your customers want. When you understand the technical requirements of your farm, it will help you select seeds that will grow better in your farm. Also, the seeds are another place where you can increase your profitability. And either this can be done through higher quality or higher yield. And finally, as we touched on the last slide, it takes a long time to produce seed and it doesn't come out of a factory. So in order to avoid shortages, you really need to plan ahead and communicate well with your seed farm companies. So the focus today was to really talk a little bit about the seed industry and give you the basic information you needed. This is just the first of a four-part series on seed production and everything you need to know about seeds. Again, Stratagerm works with different clients to help them understand this process even better. We have worksheets that we go through to help identify your technical specification and who your clients are. And then we take that information to seed companies to help you figure out what seeds you need. We also can explain more how that production works and what the next steps are. So I really appreciate you joining me today. I hope that you will join me for the next 3 webinars. They will be coming out throughout the winter. After the session ends today, you will be getting an email from me to sign up for the next part of the video series. Again, I really hope you join me, and I look forward to our one-on-one conversations about your farm in particular and what your challenges are. So my contact information is on the screen, and I look forward to talking to you. Does anybody have any questions that they want to throw into the chat? Well, please join our Facebook page. You should be getting our newsletter. And again, be in touch. I really look forward to answering your questions. Thank you for joining me today. It's been a great event. Have a great afternoon. I don't know how to turn it off. I don't know. I don't know where my screen went. Oh, okay. Here's my contact information if you're still there. I think it's showing up now. And I'll make sure it gets out to everyone. Thank you.